Well, welcome to Christ Centered. This podcast really focuses on people who are centered on Christ in their life, particularly chiropractic. We got Dr. Tim on today. How you doing, Dr. Tim?
Doing incredible, better than I deserve for sure. Praise God.
And so tell us a little bit about your story there. You're there. Your wife's a chiropractor. Got a baby, one on the way. Give us a little background here.
Yeah, my chiropractic journey is probably similar to most. I had a kind of a life-saving or life-changing injury that took place playing football. And long story short, it was through chiropractic, more I would say general chiropractic, that saved my life. I was practically paralyzed from the waist down from a football accident, and
Wow.
yeah, did the whole thing that we're supposed to, right? Went to the doctor, did the PT, all the stuff, the pills, and this guy, just after my second visit, I knew two things after the moment. One, I was going to heal, and two, this is why God put me here. So it set a really strong foundation. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 16. However, was never told the story. Just knew that it drastically changed my life that much that I want to become that. So, long story short, there's even more that you may not know. I interned with a chiropractor in undergrad. She got me onto Reggie Gold and
Oh,
all the
really? I didn't know
pre-work.
that.
Yes, and that's when it was like, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life. I understood the why behind the what and the how. So went to chiropractic school, met my beautiful wife there, and then unbeknownst to you, I actually have my middle sister is a chiropractor. She's in Charleston. She does upper cervical as well. And then my youngest sister went to Sherman as well, and they practice. Her and her husband practice in Texas. So we're the family tree of chiropractors. I'll take the pride on being the first for sure.
Well, I did not know you had the whole chiropractic team.
The whole
Because one of
gang.
my questions, because your dad was a pastor, right?
Yep. I was a
So,
pastor. Yep.
so, so it's interesting that a pastor created three chiropractors. So was there any connection there? Because for me, what set me on fire for chiropractic is my very first chiropractic seminar is really where I discovered God. So, I read some things here and there, obviously, before that time in my life. But when you started hearing from the stage that God heals and that chiropractors work for God to serve people and we move the bone and God does the healing and the power that made the body heals the body and it doesn't happen any other way. And I'm like, man, I get to work for God. I'd like to find out a bit more about that. So to me, chiropractic is very connected with Christ and serving God. And so it's interesting that you guys kind of came in there in the reverse of the way I did it. You knew God and then became chiropractors.
Mm. Yeah, no, I heard you say that on another podcast, and it really resonated. I wanted to do chiropractic, but I felt short. Like I don't feel like I'm serving God doing chiropractic. I didn't see the connection, and then it was actually Edwin Cordero who said the statement, "We move the bone, and God does the healing." And then it was that confirmation that I get to work for God while I do this and help people on the ministry of health, which is we feel like what we've created here, certainly with the help of C3.
That's awesome. So is there you had made a comment earlier. So this guy saves your life, this chiropractor,
Yep.
but hadn't really told you the story. So when you say the story, what did you hear? Obviously, there's one thing what Dr. Ed told you about the power that made the body heals the body, but what else is the story to you?
Yeah, I would say a lot of Reggie's philosophy was pretty embedded into me, at least how this woman practiced kind of solo, no x-rays, muscle palpation type. And she started just sprinkling these things, listening to the orientation. It was like, I feel like I've always genuinely resonated with that. Even as a kid, like if I had an ankle sprain or a back injury, like how does the ibuprofen know how to go to my ankle and my back? Well, it doesn't. It affects everything. And it just like the philosophy of chiropractic made sense with how I felt like I was already operating. There was maybe just no label or profession that I could connect myself to. And I heard that from really more Reggie and his and Strauss and the blue books she forced me to read, which I think was helpful as an intern. It just everything made sense, and I feel like it was the spark that ignited my purpose to and kind of learning how it tied into serving Christ later on.
So did you ever actually meet Reggie or just heard the tapes?
Seen a lot of Reggie stuff. Never got to meet him officially. He was on the way out. I never got to meet Reggie nor Sid, who were very influential in my life. Obviously with DE and Reggie with part of Sherman, but never got to meet them in person.
So Reggie, I had 30 Reggie Gold tapes, cassette tapes. You may not even know what those are, but I had these 30 tapes
I do
and
know.
I burnt them all out. So not a single one of them worked by the time I was done listening to them 72 times over. And he just made it simple too. I mean, he had a lot of obviously very deep, profound thoughts. He was a brilliant guy, But one simple thing he simply said, and I want to kind of move to this with your upper cervical path. We'd love to dig into that a little bit. That, if I squeeze your upper cervical spine, then obviously I think we would all agree that your body will not function nearly as well as if I took the pressure off.
Totally.
And he's saying that's really all we're saying with chiropractic. All we're suggesting is that whether it's your aorta or your brainstem, that if we remove the pressure, you do better than you would do with that pressure. And
Totally.
so what kind of from there, what got you an upper cervical? That's obviously a very specific route, and certainly it brings the science and the philosophy together in a very powerful way.
Totally. Yeah. I know I read just wasn't really full spine philosophy, but overall chiropractic philosophy made a lot of sense going through the 33 principles. But it was actually at a DE seminar. I have to give credit to Dr. Neil Cohen. Everybody was like getting lined up to do this. He's like, "Oh, you got to get knee chest. You got to get knee chest." I'm like, "Okay, what?" Well, that's what everybody's doing. You see all these people just laying on the floor resting. So I thought that was a little weird. But got knee chest, and I got knee chest, I should say, and I feel like I felt this like spark in my brainstem for a guy. I was like, "Whoa, that's the brain." And I told Dr. Cohen, he's like, "Yep, that's what happens when you work on the brainstem." So just he's like, "Lay down for a second." So I laid down and kind of when I got up, a lot of things changed, right? I just feel like colors seem more clear. My breath was so much more pure. I feel like I was in a really relaxed state. And then I really noticed like my focus, I could almost focus on one conversation that I was having, but also be aware, but not distracted from the other conversation. So it was like, I could just feel this like mental clarity. And it was like, that's what I want to do for people. Again, experienced it before knowing the science of it. And then the science kind of came later with schools, different seminars. And it just resonated with how we want to practice as far as finding the subluxation. I've got the thermography scan to tell me when, I've got the x-rays to tell me where, and then I've got the actual table to show me how. And that kind of took all the guesswork or ambiguity out of it to serve people in a very practical manner.
Yeah, I actually got to meet Dr. Kale, so I learned knee chest from the man because he would come speak at some of the seminars I would go to and have these breakout sessions and actually teach his
Yep.
corrective care technique. And he had miracle stories that just made you say, "That's the technique I'm going to do." And I've been adjusted by him several times, and it was the one
Wow.
time, speaking of like that spark. So I was pretty beat up at the time. I had wrestled rugby, the whole thing for so many years, powerlifting. So my whole body was shot. And so pain everywhere. And so he does this upper cervical adjustment, the knee chest adjustment. And I literally felt this heat just go into all the damaged areas. And so as I just sat there, it was like some wisdom was just making its way throughout my body, going into every damaged spot that I
Yep.
had, and was just healed, almost like a miraculous church healing that somebody would have. I was literally healed from this adjustment. And so, blown away. And he had a real quick story. He has this great story he tells pretty frequently where his son was like blown up in a kitchen accident. And so he gets this call. They put the son in the ambulance. They're taking him to the hospital. He flies over there in his car, blocks the ambulance, opens the door, says, "Out of my way. This is family business." Jumps up there, turns his son's head over, does the knee chest adjustment, picks his son up, and rips him out of the ambulance and takes him home. Just only like the old school chiropractors used to do. So absolutely love
Totally.
that guy.
No, he was charismatic for sure, and us chiropractors like to exaggerate the story, right? The fish was maybe a little bit bigger than how we framed it, but yeah, never got to meet him either. He passed before my knowing, but seen some audio. Obviously, learned from guys who learned directly under him, and again, just convicted in the principle, certainly with upper cervical, and had a lot of research around it. So I think I was more of I felt it, and then I kind of sought the research after. Is how I got into it, and just resonated with how we wanted to practice in our clinic here.
Cool. Yeah, his son-in-law was my student doctor. So then, fortunately, some things it's better to be old, like in chiropractic. We're not an old profession, so you got to know all the guys that became now our patriarchs, and all the people that are matriarchs were people that were still breathing when I was going to school.
Yeah, that's a unique insight observation for you through your career, whether it's through school or practice. You've had your pretty with arm's distance of some pretty big legends in our profession. So
Yeah, yeah, no, it was definitely a blessing. So as far as just for like people that don't get this, so somebody walks in and their back hurts or they got sciatica, and you're saying, okay, we're going to adjust you right here. So I remember that was a big part of listening to people like him is share the philosophy or and really the science, which are one and the same really, of how we're adjusting the atlas, and that's how we're addressing your, your problem with your colon or your problem in your ankle by adjusting up here. How would you explain that to somebody?
Well, fortunately, I'm in the perfect situation in the office. I have my dandy guy here. There might be a little bit of a glare, but I've got my writing reflex poster here, and basically just show if there's a misalignment up top, it shifts how the head sits because of the reflex. We want to keep the eyes level, and it'll compensate the shoulder to go down, which can create lower neck issues, middle back issues. It can distort how the hips they're level, so that can distort that, which will create lower back pain, then obviously knee pain, even create a short leg, which can create some ankle or calf issues. So basically, I'm saying, can you see how something up here can create a chain reaction all the way down, right? And then obviously, I'll switch up the color so it locks in their brain. So, Dr. Ben, if you have back pain, right, based on what we just learned, did it essentially start there? No, it has a probability that it maybe started up at the very top, and that's why we want to start there first to see if that's where that upper cervical subluxation is. So that's kind of how
Very cool.
I'll communicate it to patients or to anyone watching.
Beautiful. There's another explanation that Sid Williams, you mentioned Sid a second ago. So Sid would he called, if you look at obviously the foramen there, and you see the brainstem coming down through the foramen into the atlas and out to the rest of the body, we called that opening the mouth of God. And so if the atlas goes, because Sid was big upper cervical, the school was very upper cervical when I was there, when Sid was alive. We were doing
Mm.
upper cervical research and just looking at how it affected things like AIDS. They were doing AIDS research, doing upper cervical chiropractic, and saw CD4 counts explosively go up after upper cervical care. And but Sid's explanation was a very powerful one, that you're correcting the mouth of God so that the brain can speak to the body like it's supposed to. Is very, very, very powerful way to look at it.
Yeah, and I go back to even I heard Shipman say this, but he's paraphrasing the Bible. God made the simple things to confound the wise. I think health and reality is more simple than we allow it to be. Maybe even chiropractic, if we're able to venture into that philosophy. But no, we do some full spine stuff as well. I just think really the essence of getting a pure, specific upper cervical correction can give the body the best chances as far as healing.
Yeah, like I said, my miracle from that Kale adjustment was almost the way you were writing it out on that chart there. I just began to feel all those spots heal after he moved the bone and God started doing the healing.
Absolutely. Well, then you get enough evidence of like, how does my back feel looser from you touching here? It's like, well, this is why we want to connect the research with the actual application of the principle. So,
So, what are some like, give us a great story? Somebody who came in and again, it seemed unlikely that you just were going to adjust up here and the rest of the body was going to heal. Do you have a great patient story you can share?
yeah, I wish I had the pictures right off bat, but I mean, kid came in a wheelchair, two concussions, snowboarding, lost sensation in his legs, had to put a blanket on because it was so cold. He had sensory overload, so he wore a black eye mask because light was too sensitive, and then earplugs. So because of his condition, we couldn't even do an evaluation on his low back, right? So we got the X-rays on him, saw the damage. Basically, within third visit, he came in walking in a cane, and then by the end of the month, he was completely off the wheelchair, no eye mask, no earplugs, never touched his back. So, and I've had countless stories of there people coming in looking like, question marks like this, can't get on the full spine table. So, hey, let's just start at the top, see what happens, and then come back two visits later, whatever. And, they're standing upright. How does that possible? They don't even know how. And I'm like, well, that's kind of what we talked about. So you just get enough evidence to say a lot of stuff happens at the very top, and which is why we need to spend the majority of our focus and even research there.
Yeah, now of course we've learned so much over the last few years about how that impacts the brain. And when I went and got my master's in psychology, you started making those connections. So if you study neurobiopsychology, there's all these connections between the spine and the different components of the brain. It's that lack of integration that occurs with subluxation that really creates a lot of conditions mentally. And when we talk about going back to DD and BJ and what their view of chiropractic was, is that you change somebody's destiny by adjusting them. And that scientifically, just through understanding just biology and how the spine and the brain work together, is absolutely true. Like with Heidi Havoc showing as much as an 85% dysfunction in the prefrontal cortex with subluxation, that's eliminated by an adjustment, that's someone's ability to think and plan and, critically work through their life and make decisions as to where they'll go to school and who they'll marry and what job they'll have and how much money they can make. Like all those things are impacted by an adjustment. And so it's just like Dee Dee said, this thing is about connecting God and man, not simply getting rid of a headache or even cancer.
Totally. And while you're on the track, literally yesterday, I know we had talked on our coaching call about getting some pastors in here, and the wife was in. She received her first correction, and she got up, started crying while she was resting. And I called her this morning to see how she was doing. She goes, "Tim, I totally believe everything that you said at your orientation, right?" And she's a very spiritual, prophetic woman. She goes, "We can do everything right for the Lord, pray, fast, but if that principle, if we're not connected, we will not experience God's physical healing that he promises in his law." And she's like, "It is a natural law, like you talked about." And I said, "That's the message that we want for you to understand,
Wow.
your family, and certainly everybody that's part of the church." So yeah, man, it's powerful stuff, and we shouldn't take it for granted, shouldn't take it lightly or without being specific in the work that we do.
Yeah, when somebody in the church gets it, they get it like nobody else gets it. What
Totally.
does your dad think about it? With all his kids being chiropractors?
He's all in, man. He's connected to a great chiropractor up north, fortunately through our connection. And the really cool part is, my dad's a very relational oriented person, as any pastor should be, but him and his name's Dr. Masano, are just our great friends. They'll shoot guns together. He'll talk conspiracy because that's what us chiropractors like to do. But just my dad's very, very open minded as a pastor, and it's been so cool to one, not see him just get great care, but also befriend this chiropractor. And he's even had Masano come into my dad's church to speak. So they just have a very, very mutual, symbiotic relationship, which is great. So I'm grateful for them.
Very cool. And certainly one of the things he's passed down to you is the gift of speaking. Tell us a little bit about you're on the speaking tour right now. Let us know a little bit about that.
Yeah, the speaking tour is good. Fortunately, with AI, you can get really creative with how you do things. So it's just like a design to heal tour. So we're essentially trying to go around Charlotte, even doing things virtually. I've done it for some clients, even at the hotel that's right there with their corporate setting. The most effective was like a Bible study we did with these ladies, and just basically saying like what we do here is just honoring God's natural law, right? And when we do that, we can actually experience the healing that He promised us. And I just feel like that's a message that resonates with a lot of people. And yeah, the benefit of seeing my dad speak got me in front of people comfortably. My wife, who's also a chiropractor, she's behind the scenes. She hates to be in front, but she didn't grow up around that. My dad was always using me as an illustration, always using me for something. So I just grew up with the comfortability of whether it was being in front of a lot of people or being the center of attention. It just felt normal. So that was beneficial when we're going to speak in these groups and just feeling confident. My biggest challenge is I want to make sure I'm prepared to articulate in a way that people can understand to actually take action and make a decision that'll improve their life rather than just being a good speaker. I found the worst thing after a good talk, we talk about this, is, hey, that was a great talk. You might as well tell me it's the worst talk ever and done nothing. I'd say it's the greatest talk ever and do nothing. Just, hey, I need you to make a decision. That's how I know it's a good talk. So just framing a lot of things around that. We know when people make decisions and take action, their life can actually change. So trying to give people resources through talks to be able to do that.
Designed to Heal tour. You're gonna have to grab some copyright and some URLs on that one. That's a great name.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you. It's power of AI in today's culture, man. It's awesome.
So last thing, and it's impacting the numbers. So like what traditionally with upper cervical, there has always tended to be smaller numbers of people that you're seeing. So
Yep.
we've, been pioneering this thing at C3 with this 150 is a new million. And it's really been good to see, kind of the numbers changing in your clinics. What would have been some of the shifts there, practice wise, based on, the new approach you've been taking?
Yeah, it's great. I think it's important insight for people to listen to. You hang with classmates, they do full spine. Not a lot of people do upper cervical. And I would see some of the volume numbers, and I'm like, man, as passionate as I was and as successful in the work that I put on, I almost felt like a failure in some cases because the volume wasn't there, right? And some of it I would justify like, well, I'm pre-scanning people, they're resting, I'm post-scanning. So really, my or your 300 is like my 150. And I would just get such in this comparison trap and just got frustrating. And then coming to a C3 conference, you said 150 is the new million. And I mean, I totally resonate. I was like, man, that's where we are. And that makes more sense. That seems more tangible. Even guys like you that I looked up to or Schiffman, it just felt impossible just based on our, clinical protocol. But since we've been with you and having the other services like the decompression, especially, I think And you had primed me with the question, what are some philosophies I've overcome? I never considered decompression because it was a hate straight red flag. But now that we've implemented it, patients are saying, hey, I've been coming from years, but I feel like my care didn't take off until we started incorporating the decompression. And I'm kind of sitting back wondering, like, did we ignorantly suppress people getting great results because we had to hold on to this prideful thing of not helping them with the other services? So that's been really great too. And just practice feels so much lighter with some of the system tweaks and the other services and having the two people up staff. I think one of the most powerful quotes that you've shared, obviously the 150 is the new million, but you said this in the past few months when you were trying to get to the next level of your business. You got rid of all the distractions, the interns, the other docs, and you said, I need a chiropractor without a license. And ever since we've implemented that, man, it's just been volume has gone up, collections has gone up, and more importantly, practice just feels so light, right? Because the Bible says he'll, paraphrasing, he'll give us success and add no sorrow to it. And I feel like we're in that season right now, certainly with the help of Christ himself, but through C3 for sure.
Hey man, yes, yoke is not supposed to be heavy, nor his burden be anything but light. So I'm glad you're feeling that way. Last
Yes.
thing, just because I know you're involved with Sherman quite a bit, the students. So if I'm a student watching, what's some advice in that journey you'd give them to end up in the place you're at now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't say just don't waste your time with all the other stuff. A lot of the chiropractic is the same. I think what is the group that you're managing with, which I do recommend? What is their foundation built upon? Not to mention any specific names, but most of the chiropractic management groups are built on the foundation of money and wealth, and that's a false idol. And if it's not built on Christ, I feel like you can definitely get some earthly temporary rewards, but what are you setting up for eternity? And are you on a ministry? And I think that's one of the most grateful things that I'm part of with this group. No matter what we accomplish in this lifetime earthly, it means nothing to the eternal impact that we could have of bringing people to Christ. And I think with y'all's group specifically, we can communicate that in a way from an eternal perspective. So if students want an eternal perspective, not a temporal, because the names will fade. I think C3 should be something that they check out and certainly hitch their wagon to. I wish we would have started out from the beginning, but sometimes that's our own self-discovery journey. So eventually you'll arrive back here for your students that are listening.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. This was perfect. I know you're thinking about maybe being president one day. You do seem very presidential. So I I think
Appreciate that.
you got my vote.
Well, let's bring Christ into the colleges for sure. That's the goal. That's the agenda.
Amen. Well, everybody, thanks for watching or listening. Bless you, and remember who you are.